Hello, we're reading from Derek Bell's Faces at the Bottom of the Well, and I'm reading the chapter on relegalizing segregation, or legalizing segregation again. And this always stuck in my mind over the years from the time I read it. And it just got stronger as I got older and started looking at my community and what it's doing and what it's going through and the decline that it was in. And so now someone asked me on social media, we were having a back and forth private conversation about what would it look like. And I said, I'm going to do what would resegregating the United States look like. And I said, I'm going to get Derek Bell's thing and read this. As I did respond, Geneva continued, you have to make people see, just as parents used to tell children stories about the stork to avoid telling them about sex. So for similarly evasive reasons, many black people hold to dreams about truly integrated society that is brought into being by the enforcement of laws bearing discriminatory conduct. History, and one would hope, common sense tells us that dream is never coming true. Dreams and ideals are not evil, Geneva. Of course they aren't. But we need to be realistic about our present and future civil rights activities. The question is whether the activity reflects and is intended to challenge the actual barriers we face rather than those that seem a threat to the integration ideology. That's all very high-sounding, Geneva, and I agree that we need a more realistic perspective. But how can I bring others to recognize that need? We might begin by considering the advantages of such a radical measure as the Racial Preference Licensing Act. First, by authorizing racial discrimination, such a law would, as I suggested earlier, remove the long-argued concern that civil rights laws deny anyone the right of non-association. With the compulsive element removed, people who discriminate against blacks without getting the license authorized by law may not retain the unspoken but real public sympathy they now enjoy. They may be viewed as what they are, lawbreakers who deserve punishment. Second, by requiring the discriminator both to publicize and to pay all blacks a price for that right, the law may dilute both the financial and the psychological benefit of racism. Today, even the worst racist denies being a racist. Most whites pay a tremendous price for their reflexive and often unconscious racism, but few are ready to post their racial preferences on a public license, and even less ready to make direct payments for the privilege of practicing discrimination. Paradoxically, gaining the right to practice openly what people now enthusiastically practice covertly will take a lot of joy out of discrimination and replace that joy with some costly pain. I don't agree. I think people would get the license. Third, people, but maybe not when this was written. Third, black people will no longer have to divine, as we have regularly to do in this anti-discrimination era, whether an employer, a realtor, or a proprietor wants to exclude them. The license will give them and the world ample notice. Those who seek to discriminate without a license will place their businesses at risk of serious, even ruinous penalties. I know it's discrimination when I go to do something. Because if I'm qualified and I don't get it, it's got to be discrimination, especially if somebody gets it and they're not black. And I'm usually sitting across from white people. But even when I sit across from a black person interviewing me, I know as a black man, you really don't want me there. So I don't have to go through that in my mind. Well, was it racism? Was it not? It seems crazy, I began. Racism is hardly based on logic. We need to fight racism the way the forest ranger fights fire with fire. Sounds to me, I said, like trying to fight for civil rights the way Brer Rabbit got himself out of Brer Fox's clutches in the old Uncle Remus story. Something like that, Geneva smiled, sensing that she was penetrating my skepticism. In a bad situation, he lacks the power to get out of. Brer Rabbit uses his wits. He doesn't waste any energy asking Brer Fox to set him free. He doesn't rely on his constitutional rights. Rather, he sets about pleading with Brer Fox that throwing him in the briar patch will be a fate worse than death. Convinced that the worst thing he could do to Brer Rabbit was the very thing Brer Rabbit didn't want him to do, Brer Fox threw Brer Rabbit into the middle of the briar patch. And of course, once in the brambles, Brer Rabbit easily slipped through them and escapes. So, I pursued, even if civil rights advocates strenuously resisted seeing any benefits in the Racial Preference Licensing Act, they may have their consciousness raised so as to seek out other sorts of briar patch. Exactly. Civil rights advocates must first see the racial world as it is, determined by the need to maintain economic stability. And then, in light of that reality, they must try to structure both initiatives and responses we need, for example, to push for more money and more effective plans for curriculum in all black schools, rather than exhaust ourselves and our resources on ethereal integration in mainly white suburbs. So I don't know what this sounds like to you. Maybe it sounds like, that might work. Maybe it sounds like, maybe not. Maybe that's not what we want. But the way things are looking and the way things are shaping up, we may end up with something like this. And if we don't do it in an organized way, it'll just be done in an organic way. And we haven't seen those kind of slums in mass in a long time. And I really don't think black people, as a matter of fact, I know most black people don't understand what our future is if we don't put something together at this moment. And we have a window. I mean, if something's not done by the end of this year, either from that we lean on the political structure to do, and that we put in some structures in place, we're going to be in real big trouble. And I'm destitute. I'm telling you, it's going to get worse. I thank you for your support. Take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe.